Hey guys, so next up we're going to tackle cinematics inside of Unreal. It's a really powerful tool that we can use inside of Kismet called Matinee, and previously we've used this for things like opening doors, but we'll take it that little bit step further and actually incorporate a few more tracks into the Matinee to make things more interesting. Before we do get started, I would like to direct you to a page on the UDN Matinee and Cinematics, which can be found here. It's a really good documentation, and it goes straight through from the beginning to end, even adding advanced kind of features, so definitely worth checking that out. But back to our scene, I'll just give a quick playthrough to show you the intended end result for us. So when we jump in, we can jump up onto these boxes. We have an on-screen indication saying press E, so when we press E, we slide down the rope with this robot character, which is our default Unreal character. We go through the window, smash our head on the wall, kind of dazed a bit, wake up, and now we're down here. So we teleported from up there down to here, and now we can continue with the gameplay. So in the level side of things, we've just got a few meshes placed, just for decoration really. You can just use BSPs if you just wanted to try out the system. I've got a few cameras in here. I've got 3 altogether. 2 up here and 1 further down the scene, which I'll show you later. You can find the cameras in actor classes, common, camera actor. We've used those before on the doors. I've got this wire mesh here. If I just find that in the Unreal browser, it's in NEC wires, and it's just this looping thin wire here. Further down the scene, I've got some window pieces here. They're just default on Unreal, and it'd be much better if you could model your own, like whole window and then smashed window. I've just used what's available in UDK. Again, we have this down here. We have an emitter there and another camera for our final cinematic. And we also have a note at the end. I'll go through why we're using the note after, but if you did want to set up your note, you can find them in uncategorized, and it should be there under note. And you can just right click and add a note there. So in our Kismet now, if we just scroll back up to the top, we'll open our Kismet window, and we've got a few things going on there, and I'll just open up the Matinee just to show you, the kind of different tracks that we can use here. So as you can see, a little bit more advanced than the door, and we've got a lot more things going on, but we'll break that down bit by bit as we go. The main thing that you do need to set up in your scene, however, is this skeletal mesh. We've got this guy here, and if you right click on him, find him in the content browser, he's under the characters, Liam Cathode, or you can just select UDK game, tick your skeletal mesh box here. You might not be able to see that, I'll just make it a little bit bigger. So tick your skeletal meshes, and that'll find all skeletal meshes. Since there's not many in Unreal, you can just scroll down, or you can type in Liam in this box up here. But yeah, we just use this guy here, which is our default Unreal character. So a few settings that we do need to change for him. If we just press F4 to bring up the properties, we need to have him hidden, and we also need to give him an anim set. The reason why we have him hidden is because when we're playing the game, we don't want to see him there. That kind of breaks the illusion of that's us sliding down the rope. We want the player to feel like that is us, but we still need a skeletal mesh in the scene to represent who we are. So he is hidden by default. And just a quick side note, the way we've got these favorites is if we just press this toggle favorite window visibility, we can add certain things that we change in all the time. So instead of going into all these sub properties and stuff, if we just press the star next to something, it'll update in this top window here. Of course, you can still scroll down, but for things you're changing constantly, it's a nice way to speed up your workflow a bit. So I'll just untick that because I don't need anything to do with joints. And so we have him hidden, and we also need to give him an anim set. So if we just find this in the content browser that I've used a UT3 characters, in anim human, I've just used a base male anim set. And we can double click on this, and it'll bring up all our animations. And in here, we can just preview animations that we want to show, and pick our animations off that. To see our animations, you can just go to the Anim tab up here, and you've got lots of different animations that we can see we've got the Iron Guard male here as a previewer, but the same animations will work for Liam. So you can scroll down here and pick whatever animations, and if you go to the taunts, you could double click one and just press play, and these are the kind of things that we can assign inside of Kismet for our cinematics. So if you want to do something a bit different, just preview your animations here, and we can add them inside of Kismet later on. So we need to have that K-anim human base male anim set selected, and then we'll click on our robot, and you just go to anim sets, which is inside the skeletal mesh actor, skeletal mesh component, anim set. You'd need to press the add new item button and then just plug in this anim set with it selected in the editor. Just press that green button and that updates there. I don't think for these cinematics you need to give him a physics asset or anim tree, but I have done anyway. You can find all these things inside the UT3 characters anim corrupt here, physics asset, same way you just plug it in into the physics asset, and same with the anim tree. You can just search out all these things, and that's ATCH human. Not playing too much with those, but I've just selected them by default. So we have hidden and we have our anim set. They're the main two things that we need selected for this guy here. And apart from that, that's our scene set up. So now we'll get into actually creating this in Kismet. So as you can see, the first thing that we did here was we had the trigger saying press E to use, and then we can start the cinematic. So you don't necessarily need this for the cinematic to work. Any kind of event will trigger off the cinematic. Say if you want a certain part of your scene to go into a cinematic, you can just choose your event from there. For me, I've got a trigger used. So in Kismet, I'll show you what that's involving. So I first created the trigger touch event by right-clicking a new event using trigger touch, and I had that in there. And so I also added a play announcement, which you can right click, new action, voice announcement, play announcement there. And so I just hooked those two up, and in the announcement I just press announcement text, press E. I also had a sound in there. You don't need to use it, but if you are following along, I used the pickup health sound small in there. I've just got press E. So on the touch, you can press E. I don't think I changed too much else in these properties. So I guess you could change the max trigger count in here to 0 if you wanted. I've just got it set as 1, but if you wanted other things going on, whenever the player touches it, you could play the announcement. I've just got it set at 1, so I've not really changed any properties in here. So when you touch it, it plays that announcement, press E. And as we know, the E key is the use key in UDK by default. So then we've created another event using the trigger here, right click a new event, trigger used. And so now when we actually use it by pressing E, it actually starts the cinematic. So we've turned off aim to interact here. We set the interact distance at 200. You don't necessarily need to do that. And we don't need to change the max trigger count, as we only want to do this once. So that's the start of the sequence. So this is just an indication, giving the player a message about what to do with the cinematic, rather than just expecting them to press E by default. We're sending the player a message of just press E, and then when we press E, we can start the cinematic. The next thing we've got in here is the toggle cinematic mode. We've not used this yet, but it's good for any kind of cinematics, as the toggle kind of hints at. You can find these in the toggle, a new action toggle, toggle cinematic, and you always want the target to be player 0. So we can hold down P and left click, and that automatically creates a link, all players. You just need to tick off all players, and that's your player 0. And some of the properties inside of the cinematic are disable movement, turn in, hide player, disable input, hide HUD. So I've got all these checked. I've enabled all of these, but if you still want to be able to move around in the cinematic, or you don't want to hide the HUD, say it's a real-time first-person cinematic that you still want to keep the illusion that the player is still playing, you can not hide HUD. So you can play around with some of them settings, but for this example, got them all checked, all default, and we've enabled. At the end of the cinematic, if we scroll over here, we've got a toggle cinematic, and at the completed, we're disabling the cinematic, again with the target of the player. So whenever the cinematic ends, we have to disable that again, otherwise from these things that we've enabled, like disable movement, disable turning, hide player, we're not going to be able to continue playing the game if we don't disable it again. So just remember to enable and disable again whenever your cinematics complete. Another thing that we got at startup is an unhide toggle, which is action toggle, and that's a toggle hidden. And that's just saying we need to unhide the skeletal mesh, because we've got the skeletal mesh hidden by default. If we just check out the properties, hidden, and so we need to unhide him to make the player believe that this is you sliding down the rope. So I've just right clicked here and created a new object value using skeletal mesh 0, and you can just hook that up there. And then we start going into all the cinematic side of things. And so the first thing to tackle when doing cinematics for me is all the cameras. So forgetting all the other movement and stuff like that, we'll go into what the cameras are doing when. So we are just checking out this director track here. And so as we're scrolling down, we can see, if I zoom in here, we got camera 1, which is orange. We got camera 2, back to camera 1, back to camera 2, and then we got 3 and 4 further down here. So what we're doing with camera 1 and 2, if I just scroll through, we got camera 1 following the player, and then when we scrub to camera 2, see the opposite direction, back to camera 1, back to camera 2. This just adds a bit more action to the scene, and as we can see in the background, that other camera is following the player down there. So they're the first things that we want to set up along with the player moving. So to get the Liam moving, I think what I'll do is I'll just create a new sequence here just so we can move this out of the way, and we'll create a new Matinee from scratch just so you can see what's going on. So if we double click the Matinee, we'll add the character in here first. We'll right click, new empty group, and just call this Liam. And add a new movement track for him. So if this guy was selected, it should be green, and if we deselect, it deselects from the level, so we know that it connected up, and we've got the movement track in there. And so a good way to do the movement is to go go to the end point of where the movement's going to finish and hit enter on the movement track. So with the movement track selected, just hit enter. And then if we move this to the side, wherever we want him to end is where we'll place him. So with the second track selected, we'll just move him down to here and say this is where he smashes through the window. I'll just rotate him up a bit so it looks like he's still on the rope there. If you press, and if you unassign the key now, that's him moving all the way down there. Obviously you might want to slow it down a bit, you pick with the timings. But the main problem here is that if we zoom out, we've got this straight line going down here. Okay, so now we can go back through the sequence in the movement, and we can maybe select it at 1 second, press enter to add a key, scrub up here, and just change to our movement track just by pressing spacebar, our movement widget, sorry. And then as you're going along, you can move this guy down. So I just add another key here. As we can see, is lifted up a bit off there, so we'll just bring him back down. And he might possibly move up a bit here as well. And we'll just move him down. So that's a good way of doing movements, because if you just select in point by point by point, you don't know the exact speeds, and he might speed up a little bit here and then slow down here and then speed up, and you'll never get your movement quite as fluid as you want it. So it's always best adding the last movement track first and then going through and editing the exact points that you want him moving along, because it just creates a much more fluid sequence. So that would be how you do your movement track for Liam. If we just open up our big Matinee again. So we've got the movement there, which we just encountered, and now we'll select the anims for him moving along the rope. So if we just jump over to our other Matinee, and I'll show you how to add the anim track again. We can right click here, new anim control track, and a couple of properties you need to change in this is when you create your group for Liam, which is here, we're looking for an anim set. So we need to go into our content browser and find the anim set for what we assigned Liam. So if we just go into characters all and select anim sets, in characters, sorry, anim sets, we're using the base male anim set. So with that selected, we can close our content browser and just add a new item here and plug that in there. And now we're looking for any animations that we've assigned to him. So we can now add some animations to our anim control track. If we press enter, we get a full list of animations that we can choose. And if you saw any animations in the anim set editor that you liked, say we were previewing some of the taunts before, the flag pickup or the come here, anything that you want to use in this anim set will now play inside of Kismet. So say we've got a taunt come here, and if we just zoom into Liam, he's rotated downwards a bit, so it may not look right, but if we play it, oh, he's on the move as well. So I'll just disable the movement track just by unticking that, just so we can preview the taunt. So now he's doing that. So if you wanted him to taunt come here while scrolling down this wire, this might look pretty cool. So yeah, he's doing that while he slides down the rope. So any animations that you want to assign to the skeletal mesh, that's how you do it. Just remember to add it on the overall base group here, add an anim set so we can actually choose them from the anim track. So if we go into our Matinee and open it up, we can see the animals that we've got selected here. I've got the hoverboard idle, which is him just on a hoverboard inside of UDK game. There's a vehicle called hoverboard, and that's just a default anim which kind of suited my purposes there, so I just added that there. And I've also got hoverboard strafe, which can be found in the preview anims, and it just leans back a little bit there, so that kind of looks pretty cool. You could just have it moving down the track without animations, that's totally fine, but if you just want to add a bit more depth to your character animations, that would be a nice way to do it. So I've got hoverboard strafe there, so I just added it by scrubbing along the track, just press enter wherever I need it. And for example, I found hoverboard strafe, so it's one of these here. So you can just have a play around with what works and just mix things up a bit. So I've got a hoverboard lean full range here, so he's leaning back a bit, and I've selected these cameras, the camera cuts, so we can see exactly what he's doing at that time. So if we were still in this camera shot, you wouldn't be able to see that strafe left a bit. So it's all about being a good director, I guess, at this point. So I've cut to camera 2, and now when I cut to camera 2, you can kind of see him do that full lean back. So it wouldn't have been as effective if you had been looking behind him. So just keep in mind the camera angles as well when you're doing that. So you can just slide down there and add whatever animations you want going along the line. If there's an animation too long or too short, you can select the animation on here, and you can actually make them shorter or longer, however you want it to do. So if you only like a certain part of the animation, you can cut it down so it doesn't play the rest. It's completely up to you if you do that or not, but generally the animations in UDK are pretty good, and you should leave them at that length unless they're like a looping animation or anything. So that's Liam covered. The Liam group only has the anim track and the movement, and the rest is done purely by cameras. So moving on to cameras, we have 3 cameras in this group here. If I just show, actually I think we might have 4. Yeah, we have 4. So if I make this Matinee track a little bit bigger, we can see these a bit better, and so we can see everything together. There we go, that should do. So our first camera is this front-facing camera here. If we see that, well, it's our back-facing camera actually. So if we see the back camera for that, all we've done is added the exact same movement as we have for the top movement of Liam, and we've just moved him along with that so that the camera moves at the exact same pace as Liam. So if you check out the exact key points there and the exact key points there, we've just exactly the way we moved Liam across down here, we've just added the camera points there, so it follows the exact line and the acceleration of Liam, so there shouldn't be a problem tracking him. But as you'll notice, on the camera 2, we've not got any movement tracks here, and this is just because I wanted to show you a different technique that you could use using cameras. So if I just exit out here and we'll select camera 2, which is already selected in the level, but this is the front facing camera, you can see this little green box around Liam here, and we've got a line coming from the camera to the green box, and this means that this camera is actually attached to Liam. So if we just open the camera's properties and press an F4, and if we go to attachment, we have this base here, so I could favorite this just to speed things up, because whenever you're attaching stuff, generally this will be the main setting that you use. And what I've got here is the skeletal mesh of Liam, the skeletal mesh actor 0. So the way we've done that is, if you highlight an actor, obviously the properties come up here, and if I selected another actor, the properties would update to that. So a way to select a base here is to have the camera selected, and what we'll do is we'll just use this lock selected actors, and if we press that, when we select other actors, it won't update to a static mesh or an interp actor or whatever else you're selecting. It'll actually have that property selected, but it won't change in the properties. So if we select Liam here and we just plug him into there, then it'll allow us to select that, and then if we unlock it, then we can select other things. So that's a way to get Liam locked into the camera. So wherever Liam goes, this camera will follow now. So if we open our Matinee again, this camera doesn't need a movement track, but if we switch to camera 2, we can see him still moving along, but he's following Liam's exact movements there. So that's another way to do a camera inside a cinematic if you want to do that approach as well. It just means wherever Liam goes, that camera will always follow, so you don't need a movement track or anything like that, and that'll work out pretty well. So the next few cameras in here, we'll just talk about adding them to the director track. So in all cinematics, you'll need a director group, because when you're trying to select from different cameras, how do you know which camera to play through? We touched briefly upon this in the moving doors tutorial, but for anyone that doesn't know how to add a director group, you can just right click in the empty space, and at the bottom it'll say add new director group, and that'll immediately separate that from the rest of the other groups in the scene, in the Matinee, sorry. And this is where I normally add all my event tracks and sound cues and everything like that. I don't like to muddle things up inside these groups. If it's an event happening for the overall Matinee, I would add them up here. And so the director track is the one that you're mainly concerned about when it comes to cameras, because as we scroll along the bar, we can press enter and we can ask it, cut to where. So I could cut to camera 3 at this specific point at 2.5 seconds, and then it'd start looking through the third camera, for example. Liam's not there yet, so we can't see him, but that's how you add different cameras to the director track, which we touched upon inside of the doors tutorial. So that's the director track, and we've made it a bit more complex by adding this third and fourth camera here. And the reason why we've added this third and fourth camera is because as we see camera 3, and we pan to camera 3, we can still see that second attached camera moving with him, and as we see when we scroll along here, we've got him smashing through the window. So this is kind of like an action camera showing just before he smashes in to the window, and then our fourth camera is showing from the other side of the smash. That'll show us falling through, and that'll be like a first person view camera. So if we see camera 4 down here, we have a lot more movements. We start there and then we crash our head, etc, etc. A way to not get the camera moving from startup, because obviously we don't want this fourth camera moving by the time it gets to here. So I've just selected this first key. If you go to edit, duplicate selected keys, you move that along to wherever you want the camera to start moving, and it'll keep that point there, and then you can start moving the camera from then on. So I'll just delete that. And so that's pretty much the four cameras explained, plus the skeletal mesh movement group. And now we'll go into looking at the director group and sending events off there and adding a bit more complexity to the Matinee.